So you just got a new fountain pen and you're not exactly sure just how to make it work. Not too difficult, but it is a little different. So we'll take the cap off the barrel, and your concern is going to be getting the ink to the nib and the feed. So what you're going to need to do to get ink in the pen in the first place, your converter, this thing, is going to be empty, of course, when you first get it. I've put ink in this, but when they're empty, they look like this, and when you twist, it will push the ink down, or conversely, if you have the tip and the feed in an inkwell, you can draw it back up through the feed into the converter. Now, I don't care to do that. I don't like to do that. So I get a little syringe from an inkjet refill kit, and I'll actually put this into an inkwell, draw out the ink, and then put it into the converter. It's cleaner, it's simpler, and I can use ink to the very bottom of an ink jar that way. Otherwise, if you have to dip the pen completely in, you have to have enough to submerge almost the entire feed, or it will draw air. So, once you've got ink into the feed, now I should back up. You can, in addition to using the converter, which most of them come with, you can use a pre-filled ink cartridge. So I could remove just normally by pulling them out. Sometimes they do unscrew, but pulling them out and then pushing this out, pushing this in, and you have to push it in firmly in order to puncture the hole here. So you push it in firmly till you feel it puncture, and then you can, to get the ink started, you can squeeze these little cartridges just a bit. It's much simpler to get them started with the converter if you just run the little piston down and push it into the feed. Once it's in the feed, sometimes depends on how lucky you are, I think. By the way, I do not what they call post my cap on the barrel ever. I don't want to scratch my pens or ruin it. That's a common persuasion. So if I am lucky, and I'm not, okay. That's very typical to not start first out. There's a couple things you can do. You can push a little bit of ink down into the nib and try it again. And commonly it doesn't work. Another kind of workaround that always works, but it may or may not continue to feed, is to go to your inkwell and to dip the feed in the well. And you want to dip it a little as close to the chrome as you can without getting crazy. And I'm going to wipe some of the excess off. And almost always, now it will begin to write. The problem with this is that it may or may not continue to write because you aren't assured it's drawing yet. But it generally will get you started. If you do that a couple times, you're pretty much assured that it will continue to feed. And that's fundamentally it. There are some tools I use to make things just a little bit easier. Like I mentioned before, the syringe. I also have a little container. This is just a plain old kitchen type container of water. And oftentimes, just a quick little dip in the water will get your feed started. Now, if you're really having a lot of trouble with your feed, and when it starts writing, instead of writing smooth like this one is, if it's skipping a lot, there generally is a problem in the feed. If it's a brand new pen, oftentimes there may be residue or some sort of problem in the feed, and they may need to be rinsed out. I have a specific little tool I use for this, and this I just suction up some water, and then I push the water through the feed by squeezing it. You can do the same thing with a converter. It's just a little more tedious. Just push the water through by screwing the piston down, and it'll push water through the feed. And I would put like a drop of dishwashing soap, the mildest you can find, into a full container this size to clean it. Don't put a lot in. You don't want a soapy mess. When you do that, then your pen will write real faintly because it'll be a mix of water and ink, but it will run through, and if you let it sit overnight, the water will most likely evaporate, and then it will write properly. So this one looks like it is actually switched over to feeding through the nib, because the other way should have run out by now. This is a very inexpensive, what I would call a starter pen. I have numerous pens. This is a Bexley Pocket Pro. You can see this is a very small little pen. It's designed to fit easily in your pocket. It doesn't have anything to lock into your pocket, so I use this. Works just extremely well. Now this Bexley Pocket Pro has a custom nib that I have had made, and as you can see, it writes almost like calligraphy. It's a very pleasant pen to write with. I really like this little pen. I also have a couple of Franklin Conklins here. Franklin Conklin. Franklin Christophs. A couple of Franklin Christophs. Now, I happen to like the Franklin Christophs. I have many other different kinds, but I currently have these inked. So this is a Franklin Christoph, not Conklin. And as you can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't, I don't know. This has a very flat, wide nib compared to the other pen. So very flat and wide. Compared to, and this one screws the cap on. Some of them pull, some of them screw. So be careful and be a little ginger. This is the nib for the Bexley Pocket Pro, which I like very much. And it looks similar, but what you may or may not be able to see is it's not flat. It's actually at a slight angle. So it gives me that cursive. And finally, the last one I'm going to show you today is another Franklin Christoph with yet another type of tip. And I think you can see that just a little. It's going to look fairly similar to the last one, only not quite as wide. So one of the things that's so fun about these fountain pens is you can select what type of a writing style you want to present, and probably even more importantly to some people is the fact that there are so many types of inks available. They generally come in pretty cool little bottles. This one happens to be an OMOS bottle. It's octagonal. This one is a platinum Sailor bottle. It's called Sailor. Platinum is their, I think, parent company. This one's round and kind of cool. This is a Pelican Edelstein bottle. They're sapphire. It is a special kind of an ink. You need to be a little careful how you use that because it can stain your pen. This is Waterman, and this is probably the gold standard for taking care of a pen without any risk. Unfortunately, it's a little bland. The color is not as striking or penetrating as other colors. So I don't use it very much, but if I ever have a pen that has a problem with skipping, I put that in. If it works with the Waterman, then I know it's probably an ink problem as opposed to a feed problem. So I use that kind of to check, as like I say, as the gold standard, because that one flows as well as any. Hopefully you won't have problems with feeds, but if you do, you can always get help. By the way, I'm going to show you the cartridges that fit in this little pen, because there are different cartridges for different pens, and they're significantly different, as you can see. So this is the cartridge for this pen. And you know, having said that, I don't think it is, because that is what I ordered for this pen. Oh, I suppose that will work. Okay. I would have expected it to be more like that, and I would expect this one would also work. However, this is the one that they sell for it as a replacement. It doesn't hold as much ink either, which isn't necessarily a big deal as long as you know how to refill them. And like I said, these cartridges can be refilled with the inkjet syringe very easily. So there you have it. I could go into a lot more detail about a lot more things, but fundamentally, that's what you need to know to get it going and to make your pen work. If after a day's use it doesn't write real well, the best trick I know of is to go ahead and dip it in a little water, just a teeny bit. That'll generally get it started. If you have the converter, if you keep watch on how much air builds up in your pen, and you just push down till the air kind of goes away, and be careful you're not pushing it out the feed, then that also helps to keep ink in the tip also. You don't always need to do that. So anyway, I hope that helps you getting started with your very first fountain pen. Thank you.